Today's conversation is sponsored by the Billy Keels Advisory Program. If you want to learn more about how to make your 9-to-5 optional, just go to billykeels.com/advising. Once again, that's billykeels.com/advising.
It's been a journey. It's been way over 90 days now that I've been away from corporate. I don't want to say there's no looking back, but it's been awesome, and it's been a learning experience.
You're listening to the Going Long podcast, the #1 podcast for the strategies, tactics, and actions high wage-earners need for living an intentionally designed life of wealth and resilience.
Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels, and you know what? Yeah, I really do enjoy these interviews. And so more than that, I also enjoy welcoming you back to another conversation because, listen, if it weren't for you listening, watching, sharing, tagging us across social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, bringing new faces, new ears to the podcast, we'd never be able to do it without you. So thank you very much for continuing to do that. For those of you who want to leave honest written reviews as well as ratings, you can do that as well. And you know what? For anyone who ever wants to watch any of the previous podcasts, which is well over 390 at this point in time, just go to billykeels.com/podcast. Once again, that's billykeels.com/podcast. And you can check out every single episode. So here's the thing. I always love when I'm speaking with investors, business owners who are actually not just talking the talk, but walking the walk, like especially when you talk about geographic freedom and you can do things from anywhere. If you've got a laptop and you have an initiative and you have the drive to take action. Well, this person spent, today's guest, I should say, spent 30 years serving our country, the US, is also dedicated part of his life to working in corporate, brings amazing insight to both of those. Had a path where he decided, well, you know what? I want to continue to innovate, create, and generate my own life, create my own life, my own path. He's going to talk to us about how he's doing that, how he's continuing to also live where he wants or travel where he wants, and be able to continue to build his life. I'm really, really looking forward to you hearing the conversation that I have with the owner of Capital Turners, Mr. Peter Turner, and we're going to get to that conversation just after this. So you know what, if you've ever wanted to know how you can, just transition from communications industry to effectively using your capital and how that can increase your success in your long distance investing journey, then guess what? Today's the conversation you're going to want to listen to until the very, very, very last word. You know why? Because today's guest, not only, let's check this out. This man is awesome. You know what? He, let's say, in the beginning, I think we can say this, served our country in the Army National Guard in both fleet maintenance and safety. Really want to hear more about that. He also has this knack for education. He was a training manager also too for the National Guard Bureau. He has also worked for a massively large global communications brand in the EH&S, and I spend a lot of time working around environmental health and safety, so he's probably going to tell us a little bit about that. This gentleman also got involved in 2018 into the real estate investing space. Wow, that is awesome. And you know what? It gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation the owner of Capital Turners, Mr. Peter Turner. Pete, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Billy. Great to be here. Really appreciate the invite.
Hey, you know what, man? I'm so glad that you're here. And I love the energy. And you know what? Our big thing between you and I, we're going to try to have to not talk for 8 days because every single time that we connect with one another, it's like, wow, man, I want to just keep talking to this guy. He's awesome. So
Absolutely.
Will you try and help me?
I'll try to keep a tight timeline, maybe.
Okay. Well, I think probably your 30 years of previous experience will help you and help us. So that's kind of awesome. Pete, here's the thing, man. You know, as the host of the show, I really like to, I kind of like to keep us moving in the right direction. I'm going to ask you 2 questions in the beginning. I'm going to ask you 3 in the end. I'm probably going to ask you a lot more than that in between. I just don't know how many of those questions are, but I really want to get started. Can you really help us understand where is it that you call home normally?
Yes. Normally we have a home in Massachusetts. It's just south of Boston, about an hour south of Boston. And that is home for us. Born and raised in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was born and raised in Russia.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And hey, by the way, everyone, if you can just kind of hang on for a little bit, I think Mr. Turner's going to share something with us about kind of what he's up to today. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Maybe you'll help us out a little bit, Pete. But getting into question number two, really, I love positivity, and I know that you do too. So I was hoping that you could share with us, what is the most positive thing that has happened to you, or I like to say for you, in the last 24 hours?
It's just making connections. I'll get to where I'm at later, but we were just out walking the dogs in a new neighborhood where we happen to be working and visiting. And we just came by this guy, Tony, and he's working on cars. He's doing it at night. So there's your clue. And Tony was just a great guy. And he happened to be into drift racing. And, we just had the time and an occasion to stand there and talk to Tony and hear his whole story. And he told us where some of their local tracks were. And it's just great connecting with people authentically like that and hearing their story. Tony's originally from New York, and he came to this undisclosed location, and he's making a life now here for himself as a mechanic, and he loves it.
So Tony is not working on his car outside in Massachusetts or Rhode Island in the middle of the winter?
He is not. He is not. Tony's garage is about 200 feet from the Caribbean Ocean here in Puerto Rico. That's where we are.
Oh, yo, he just closed the loop, everybody. Wow.
That's it.
He just helped you out. He helped you out. Okay. You see, Pete's a great guy. Look, this is great. This is amazing.
Yeah.
No, Pete. So I appreciate that. And, being able to interact with people and as you're traveling and doing things in the lifestyle that you and your wife have designed. And I love knowing that you are actually living out that life. You haven't just designed it, you've designed it and you're living it. So I don't want to steal the thunder. I'll let you come back and talk about that. So one of the other things about me, Pete, that you probably don't know yet, because I don't think I disclosed that, unlike the location where you are currently, is that I'm a recovering perfectionist. So what that means is, like, I try to do things sometimes that are really impossible, like within the realm of possibility, like explaining your entire backstory in 2.5 seconds was never going to happen, but I kind of gave myself that challenge. So I need your help. I need you to tell your backstory, because I want the entire Going Long family to understand who you are, the things that you've done, number one. And number two, if you could personally help me out, because I would really love for you to share about some of the major decisions that you've made to get to this point in your journey. And then you and I can decide on where we take the conversation from there. Sound like a plan?
Yeah, I think as you listen to me, you'll hear some clues and some things to drill down on. So I grew up in this place in Rhode Island. It's a small mill town named after some Indians. It's called Pascoag. Very small mill town, New England. We didn't have a lot. I was the last of 11, but I was the tallest kid. So the hand-me-downs didn't always fit. So that's where I started. And then my father served in the Korean War, and I was always interested in serving. And I enlisted in the Army National Guard at the age of 17. My parents had to sign the papers. And from there, I really enjoyed, Billy. I really enjoyed the direction of the military. I liked that I could see the ladder and climb it and get up to success. I really liked that in the beginning. In the end, fast forward 20, 25 years later, I did start as a mechanic and became an officer, a warrant officer, and became a shop officer, and also did safety and training. But at the end, I got promoted. When you're lower enlisted, like E4, like a corporal or a sergeant or maybe a private, camaraderie. Oh, the camaraderie. I was just talking about Tony, right? The camaraderie. But as soon as you start getting promoted and you advance, just like in corporate, it gets your crowd gets smaller, right? You're not having as much fun. The camaraderie doesn't cease to exist, but almost. So I would say my first 20 years, because I was a junior officer for part of that, really great camaraderie. The last 10 years, I was dreaming of something else. I was thinking of something else. And it wasn't until I started looking at some real estate possibilities. Always had an interest in real estate. and I looked at possibly taking out a equity line out of my house that was almost paid for. I had gone, I'm sure everybody heard of Dave Ramsey. I had gone the Dave Ramsey route. I actually went to 20 classes in church basements. And then I took Dave Ramsey to the National Guard military version and taught 20 classes. So I understand Dave and I understand the importance of what he does, but he and I do not agree on leveraging. So here I am instructing Dave Ramsey, and I'm like, how can I get my hands on 50 grand to put down on a fourplex? So I bought my first townhouse back in 2018, 4 townhouses. We closed on it. It was a really topsy-turvy agreement. We closed on it the same day I retired from the military, November 30th, 2018, closed on that. And I'll tell you, Billy, I was hooked on real estate from that point forward because I was retired. This one property, even without adjusting the rents, even without making improvements, replaced my National Guard pay. So my part-time pay, my weekend drills, my 2 weeks a year, et cetera, it replaced that. In the meantime, I had transitioned the last couple of years serving in the Guard to corporate. And I went to work for a large telecom company. I took my safety experience. I got a certified safety professional, so I was very marketable. And, it's hard out there, but I had a lot of success. The funnel was like 200 job applications, 50 interviews, 5 offers. And I was able to choose from some great companies, energy companies, telecom, electric boat, General Dynamics. Really cool. So I did that. And I served in corporate for about 8 years. And you're obviously from the corporate background. After 5 years, I'm starting to look around and I'm like, I had been in the military, promotion. I'm looking around and I'm like, wow, there's not an opportunity for me. And then every time a director role came up, I was like a regional manager, I would put in for it and didn't get it and worked on improvement. The last round was actually last year. In 2023, the company went through a big change. We moved out from underneath the HR org to the operational org, which is a different beast. And again, my boss, my VP, she was awesome. She was with me the whole way. And she's like, Pete, I'd like you to stick around. I'd like you to manage the team. And I'd like you to put in for the promotion. So I put in for both promotions. I did not get promoted. I did not get promoted. And the gentleman who did, we were good friends for a while. And he got promoted and things just kind of got ugly a little bit later, like, maybe like July, August. It was a little bumpy. Now, I had already made the decision that I had planned to leave September 1st, 2023. I had told friends, my very close buddies, I had a countdown on my phone. So it was going to be 1 September. And I'll tell you, Billy, it was really hard to leave corporate. It was really hard to leave the healthcare. It was really hard to leave the bonus. And I was telling Katrina, I was like, babe, I think I might just stay, get the bonus, stay for February. It's a great job. I do enjoy it. I really enjoy the work. But I'll tell you, things get so bumpy that I had to exercise my choice to go and work for myself and build Capital Turners into what it is. It's been a journey. It's been way over 90 days now that I've been away from corporate. I was struggling at first. I was going on interviews still. I was, taking offers, but I stepped away. And I don't want to say there's no looking back, but it's been awesome, and it's been a learning experience. So I hope that your listeners, some of them that aren't there yet, when they get there, they heed these words and know it's not simple. It's a mindset. So that's some of my story.
Yeah. So, and there's a number of different things. And, it's interesting when you say that, because I have this philosophy, because a lot of what you were talking about, like, it took me a decade. I went through a pretty traumatic, what felt to me like a very traumatic thing, because I felt like I was out of alignment with myself. I wanted to be a really present father and be available for like special events. And so I've talked about this a lot publicly, where I missed my son's 3rd birthday party. Like, I saw him on his birthday, so that was kind of cool, but I missed the event. And so that caused inside of me this like feeling of not really walking in my own personal integrity. And so then I got started and it took me actually 3 years to actually do something, because I was in paralysis analysis, recovering perfectionist. But then there got to a point where I started taking action, and it took me a decade. right? From the time that I was working to the time that I was able to leave corporate. That decade, so many different things happened. And you just talked about something that I think a lot of people don't talk about when they're in corporate. And I really would love for us to be able to unpack this a little bit, because
Okay.
there's this constant thing for those that of us that are high achievers. We like competing. We like being able to move up the ladder, as you talked about. But the higher you go, to your point, there are less and less people. So those same friends that you are having the camaraderie with, as you go up the ladder, well, they become your biggest rivals. And so what I've found is either the experience that you talked about, which is someone that you had a camaraderie with, eventually it just doesn't work, or you're like really, really, it gels really, really well. I want you to maybe talk to us a little bit about, like, kind of emotionally what that was like for you. And I'm respecting that it may be a little bit uncomfortable, but I think it happens to so many of us, because I've also been in roles where I wanted the promotion and I didn't get it. And inside it was like, but it was one of my quote unquote friends that got it, or colleagues that got it, but then they took it in a completely different direction. So that was tough for me. So I would love for you to maybe get into some of the emotion of what that was like. And at the same time, I want to just say thank you so much for your service to our country, and really, really appreciate that. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I can totally relate to the missed birthdays, because being in the service, that's definitely something that happened to me. I do have a couple of children from previous marriage, and they're in their 20s, so late 20s, but they're doing great. Yeah, it is emotional. I think when it comes to leaving corporate on my own terms, I had already left something on my own terms. I could still be in the Army National Guard today. I had a great job, great pay, great benefits. When I gave my CO the recognition and the resignation letter that I actually had to write out, he's like, "Are you sure about this? Like, what? Take this back, Pete. Think about this." And I'm like, "No, sir." I said, I'm gone. I already got an offer." And they're like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Not going to say till I start." So I was
Keeping it close to
gone.
the chest.
Yeah, I was gone. So similar experience here, right? Except I was going to be leaving to something I built myself,
Yeah.
which is a little bit scary, because I've always been working for the government or a large corporation.
Mhm.
And realistically, when I look back at it, on November 30th, 2018, I had started to build what became Capitals Turners. I built a little property management company. We bought one house, we bought another house, and that income first freed my wife up from corporate,
Mhm.
um, and just to specifically stick to your question, it's just, it feels really good now. But when I was
Mhm.
going through it, Billy, I had health issues.
Mhm.
I suffer from some different things with inflammation, and everything was acting poorly on my
Mhm.
health.
Mhm.
I was very stressed out. Here's somebody that was a friend and a colleague, and now it's like, hey, Pete, here's a 90-day improvement plan. So
Yeah.
I went from being somebody that might get promoted to somebody that's on an improvement plan. I'm like, that is not me. Like, this is
Yeah.
not who I am, and I don't need to deal with this. And I was so grateful to have other choices,
Mhm.
and be able to step out and have the support of my lovely wife and my family, and just feel to step away from it. And some of the things that I was afraid of, right, was fiction. It's totally
Mhm.
fiction.
Yeah.
One of the things that everybody talks about is healthcare, right?
Mhm.
We're in Massachusetts, so we get a great exchange,
Mhm.
and we looked at it, and we could get the Cadillac of Blue Cross plans, which Blue Cross is like one of the better ones, for
Mhm.
$1,200 a month. Now, my employer said they were paying $600 a month. I was paying $600 a month. That's $1,200. My plan was, I won't name names, but it wasn't a great plan. So we were really surprised to see that what we could get for the same money. So what I realized is, being a veteran, and having a sister that works at the VA, and a bunch of friends are like, "Go to the VA." I go to the VA now. I mean, I got to
Mhm.
get to 60 years old, I suppose, to get my full retirement pay and benefits. So I have those, 7 or 8 years where I'll go to the VA. And you know what that cost? Thank God for the US government and how they treat the military. Costs zero.
Mhm.
My wife happens to be a little bit younger than myself. She's on the exchange. She's got a plan that she's happy with, $300 a month.
Mhm.
I was paying 6 working corporate. It's a problem that didn't exist,
Hmm.
and it's one of those big deals that keeps people in those golden handcuffs, right? That they don't want to leave. And here we are, we're doing fine.
Yeah. And I appreciate you really peeling that back so we get a sense of, really what happens. And at the end of the day, it goes to the limiting beliefs at times that we'll tell ourselves. And so when you were put in a position, and if I say anything that doesn't feel right, like feel free to correct me, but you feel like you were put in a specific position, what that did is rather than collapse you, it gave you the opportunity to really go out and start to seek more knowledge. Like, okay, if what I'm really feeling is it well founded? And as you started to explore, you realized that, well, this was something that was a limiting belief for you, because when you actually found out what the reality was for your situation, it really wasn't not anywhere near as terrible as the story that you'd been telling yourself in your head. Is that accurate?
That's exactly right. About the healthcare.
Yeah, about the
You
healthcare.
know?
Yeah. Because to your point is, and this is very, very US centric, I would say, is I speak to so many, whether you call them students or clients that say, hey, look, I want to stay in my job because of the benefits. And like, okay, well, what exactly is the benefit, and what is that actually costing you? And then if you look at that, like you've done, like you did, Pete, is saying, okay, well, I was telling myself I actually needed to stay in a specific situation because I didn't actually go out and do the research to find out specifically how it would affect me in my situation. Everybody's situation is different. But what I really want us to be able to take away from what Pete is sharing is that you have to do your own research to find out how a specific situation will affect you. Don't just say, well, I have to stay in my job because I live in the US and it's going to be an insurance reason that I have to stay in my job. Like, maybe it's not. Have you done the work? Have you looked it up? Have you really done the dollar to dollar, the cents to cents comparison? Yes or
Yeah.
no? I don't know. But I appreciate you sharing that with us, because it's a very specific way that you can actually say, okay, well, what is the next best step for me? And have I done my diligence to understand how, staying in a job, is it the car that you really like? Is it the benefits and the health benefits, whatever the case may be, but to walk that and talk that. I trust you're enjoying today's conversation. If you want to find out more about how to make your 9 to 5 optional, just go to billykeels.com/advising. Once again, that's billykeels.com/advising. Now back to the conversation. One of the other things, man, you mentioned this just really quickly, and it always fascinates me. You said that you'd always had this interest in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know real estate, like, other than my parents paid rent to live in a place, and we usually were changing place every year. I didn't know much about real estate, much less invest in real estate, because I didn't know a lot of people in my circles that did that. What was it that sparked your interest in real estate that kind of made you think, I want to find out more about this?
Yeah. So paying rent is painful. And I know it's not a common out there, but in my family, when you went to work, half went to the house for board. So half went to my mom to support the family. And I was the last of 11. So I had, 5 brothers just ahead of me, and they all had paper routes. Right. So I was able to get a paper route. I think you had to be 14, but I always been tall. I'm a tall guy. And they just like, oh, it's another Turner boy. So I just showed up with the paper bag, took over my brother's route at 11. And guess what happened? Half goes to mom for board. Yeah. And then later on, when I was in the military, they signed the papers for the National Guard early. I'm at a training base at Fort Dix.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? Half goes to mom.
Mm-hmm.
Half got to be a lot of money.
Yeah.
So me and my buddy Stan, we got an apartment together, and then the money was mine. And then I started to realize this real estate thing is real. And I was fortunate enough to be able to live in my grandmother's house. It was under probate, and a lot of family struggles with the money on that house. But my aunt, who was in charge of it, the executor, she let me stay there for free as long as I kept the heat on, the lights on, kept an eye on things. And I did that for 2 years. And I was able to save up a deposit for my first house. And I actually bought my first house when I was 22.
Mm-hmm.
I got married very young the first time around, and I wanted to buy some multifamily. And that partner at the time, it wasn't the right fit. Back then, you had to get the landlord tenant handbook in the mail from the state you wanted to operate in. We got that book, and she looked through that book and she highlighted every negative thing. They could not pay rent for so long. We'll be on the hook for the mortgage. I don't think this is a good idea. So you know what? Just like my love of motorcycles, because she didn't like them either, I parked it. I parked it in the garage I don't have, with the motorcycle I don't have, with the rental properties I don't have. And then many years later, I was divorced, and that's when it switched on. I was getting ready to have a lot of free time being in the military and retiring. So that's kind of like my thing for real estate was paying rent. I want to buy something I want to own.
Yeah, and I appreciate you kind of peeling back the layers. We could probably do a whole episode on the latter part of what you were just talking about, but we don't have enough time. I just want to keep talking to you. I want to keep talking to you forever. So you talked to us about what happened in 2018, on November 30th, if memory serves me correctly.
Yep.
And kind of you got started and you moved forward, and so then you've gotten to a point now, Capital Turner. So you're actually now out. You've been doing this for yourself. You are experienced to the point where now you have this knowledge base, and you're also wanting to help others. So talk to us a little bit about what it is that you're doing at Capital Turners and all that kind of stuff. Because before we get into the Going Long Final Three, I really want to find out more about what your business is all about and how you're helping people, man.
Sure. Yeah. So we had that portfolio of rental properties, so just under 50 units that we own and operate in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, which is not exactly passive, but we have good system in place with people, and it works great. So that cash generation, especially the last few years, has been great. But as you know, in the market, it was hard to find a good deal. So we started exploring opportunities to invest as an LP, a limited partner in what you call a syndication with a larger group buying an apartment building. And we got into about 1,000 units in the Southwest, Texas, Albuquerque. Properties are doing well. There was, one cash call. We decided to go with it. A cash call is when the syndication starts running a little low because of interest rates or insurance or management, and they ask for more money for the investment, but you get a bigger share of the profits. So we get excited about LP investing, and then we said, I think we could do this. I think Capital Turners could be a thing. And we started working with a coach. We went to a paid coach and a paid mastermind, which was a big decision for us. It was a good size investment, in the tens of thousands of dollars. And that is really the catalyst. The coach and the group would put goals out there like, hey, get your domain set and get your group set up. Here's the website format. Here's how you do an LOI, and start taking action. Whoever does it in the next 30 days going to get a t-shirt. Oh man, I'm like, t-shirt. Oh, I got to have a t-shirt. So we excelled, and we did that program for about a year, and we kind of got to the end of the year and we're like, do we want to keep subscribing to this? And Katrina and I both kind of felt like, I think we got the maximum value out of it. Nothing bad about the program, but why keep subscribing to it? We have some great contacts we're still in touch with. So we did that. Now, what we're doing is we started a mastermind locally, and I really love it because, as I said, like talking to Tony, I like connecting with people in person. I hope to do that with you sometime, Billy. And we have kind of a dinner group where we have a 4 p.m., which is like the early hour. We can go to any great restaurant in Boston, meet a group of 5 other folks that are, working for themselves, doing some different things. And we have a mastermind that meets bi-weekly. So 1 week we meet at a restaurant, 1 week it's on a video call. So we do that. That's kind of for ourselves and building with partners for accountability. Doesn't cost anything except dinner. Now, Capital Turners has just launched its first mastermind where we're going to host a beginner mastermind for about 90 days. Now, all our seats right now are full. You can find out more information on the website. I'll give you contact later. But we're giving back in that way. Katrina actually went on another show and mentioned it, and we get a lot of candidates right away. So we get a full slate of about 5 folks that are just starting out, and we're going to give back to them, have a mastermind every couple of weeks. And my hope for this mastermind, Billy, my hope is to show them how to manage this thing. And I actually hope that these 5 individuals continue it without me. You can always check back with me, but I'm hopeful we can do it for a period of 90 days.
Yeah.
get them started, and maybe they keep it going themselves. So that's something I'm excited about.
So Pete, it's my show, and I'm going to ask you to go ahead and share what that is, how people can find out more about it.
Yeah. So everything's right on our website. So capitalturners.com.
Perfect. See, that was easy. And you'll get a chance to tell everybody here in a little bit as well. So,
Yeah.
and thanks for just giving us some insight into how you've taken the knowledge, explored new areas, and in terms of limited partner, you've now put different frameworks in place for yourself to also help others. And so really appreciate you sharing that. And like the thing is you're our special guest. And I never ask anybody, especially our special guest, the going along final three, unless you tell me that you're ready. So, Pete, are you ready?
Let's rock it.
Shocker. I'm pretty sure I knew you were going to say that. So, here we go. So, hey, this guy from Columbus, Ohio, like if you're not watching the video version, everyone, I'm pointing to the guy from Columbus, Ohio. And I would love that because I've been over here in Europe for the last 2+ decades. I'm always interested in understanding, like, what is your Mr. Pete Turner, what is your favorite European city that you've either visited or still on your bucket list to visit?
I have visited this city. It's in Italy, and it's called Florence. We need to go back. We did not see enough of it. And I feel like in Italy, I need the tourist shirt that says Italy with an E because, oh my God, Billy, we just love it. Oh,
Well, remind me.
Sure.
Okay, Florence. So we're going to include Florence there. Also, I know you all are going to be coming over here and we're probably around Spain and all this other kind of jazz. And you're going to be showing off your dance moves, which we didn't even get into that, Pete, but that's okay. So here's the other thing. Pete, I've been very, very fortunate, extremely blessed to meet people who are extremely successful, right? And they come from very, very different walks of life. And a couple things that I've noticed about them, typically I haven't met anyone yet that's perfect and done every single venture that they've gone into, personal or professional, and done every one of them perfectly. We're going to stick to the professional here, specifically around investing. But one of the things that I've noticed is when they have a plan and the plan doesn't go as according, every single time, whether no matter how important or how small, when things go off track, what they every single time have done is they've stopped to kind of understand what's happened. And then afterwards, they put different strategies, tactics, and actions in place to minimize the probability of that exact same thing happening again. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you've not done everything perfectly.
Absolutely.
No successful person ever has. And I consider you to be someone who's very successful in a number of different areas. But what I want you to do to share with us, to help us here today, is share one lesson that you've learned. I don't want you to think about the mistake or the learning opportunity or however you want to paint it, right? Don't think about that. Think about the lesson that you took away. And what's the one lesson that you want to share with us today?
Yeah, I would say, we're writing LOIs these days for, 10, 15, $20 million buildings, right? That's what we're doing to pull down something with partners. Hopefully, this year for sure. And the details count. The details count. You really have to look at everything. Where we learned about the details counting is with a very small deal. We thought it was a 2-family in Rhode Island that we were just going to flip. When I first met my wife, she had already obtained it and we were working on it. Got to the end. It was going to be a great value add. Got a great price on it. Probably make 50, 60,000 on it. And there was a problem with the zoning. Even though this place had 2 physical houses with kitchens and everything, it was not zoned as a 2-family house. And there was a neighbor across the street that showed up to every zoning thing and said no, because she didn't like the people parking in the street. And you can't help that. So checking the details. If we're going to make that plan happen, we needed to check the detail of what's the zoning. Yep. So that's where we learned about checking those details.
All right. So make sure you check the details, and appreciate you sharing that real story. I'll tell you about a story about the details around a home inspection that I missed early on in my career. So, but thank you for sharing that with us. And then lastly, to kind of take things home here, Mr. Turner, I would love for you to share with us the one book recommendation that you have so we can feed our minds.
Yeah. That would be pretty easy for me. I've been using it for a few years. The late, great Jim Rohn. Now, if you haven't heard of Jim Rohn was actually the mentor to Tony Robbins. I'm sure people have heard of him. So Jim Rohn has this book that's called 7 Steps to Wealth and Strategy. You can find it used. It's still out there floating around. I don't have my copy with me today, but it's a pretty light read, but it's all about mindset and believing you can. I love that book. And it's a great exercise for goal writing. It's a great guide. I love goals. I've always done goals. I could tell you a story about that, but that's the book.
All right. Fantastic. So Mr. Jim Rohn, 7 Steps to Wealth and Strategy. So really appreciate you sharing that. And, I can't even believe this conversation has just flown by, man. I mean, it's gone by so fast. The beginning, you're telling us about the youngest of 11?
Yes.
Is it Pascogue?
Pascogue.
Okay. Pascogue. So Pascogue, the youngest of 11, you're telling us about all of the things that are happening as you're growing up and understanding that, well, early on, you kind of like to do things early. So you talked about the being in the Army National Guard at 17. You even talked to us about having a paper route at 11. At 11. I had one at 12, by the way, which I think is absolutely fantastic. But then afterwards, you enjoyed this whole concept of the ladder of success. And so whether that was in the military career that you moved up and you started to see, well, like, it's really cool. The camaraderie is down here. And when everyone's here, it's one thing. But as you start to move up, it seems to be less and less camaraderie and more competition. Not only did you see that.
May I add one caveat to that I kind of missed?
Yeah.
So
sure.
When I joined the Army National Guard, I enjoyed the direction and the rigidness of it. But at the end of my career, not that I just missed the camaraderie, I felt boxed by the lack of creativity. You can't come up with a new idea for the government and have something change. So that was one of the things the same thing that I liked in the beginning, I didn't like in the end. And in corporate, my boss was awesome. And she was like, hey, you want to try a safety initiative and get a new app for tracking safety? Great. We'll throw some money at it. If it does well, we'll do it. I'm like, wow, this is awesome. So that was a cool experience. But so the same thing that drew me to the military that I said I loved in the beginning, in the end, I didn't love it.
And so this is and this is great, right? Because this is one of the things that happens because you also, depending on who you are, some people like to do the same thing forever. And then there are others of us that are exposed to new inputs and we want to continue to evolve with those inputs. And we need different inputs to stimulate us to give the best creativity. And so what you're describing, Pete, is one of the things that I think a lot of us can relate to. And so whether you saw that in the military or you also saw it in corporate, there were some things that were about the same, but there's this idea in you that you will like to have new inputs. You like to create and innovate and be able to provide value to others. And so as we look along all the different things that you did and we think back what happened on November the 30th, 2018, and you actually got started and you really took action, you moved from the theory to the action and you continue to move forward. And whether it is building out your own portfolio, and you talked to us about getting up to 50 units, realizing that, hey, listen, even though you're doing this, there are things that you would like to do that are even more inclusive of others. So you look at being able to bring in larger assets, bringing in other people. You've also decided that, hey, listen, I even want to be a limited partner so you can get that experience. Mm-hmm. So many people are thinking to themselves, well, Pete, man, Billy, just get to the point. Just ask him the question. So I'm just going to ask you the question, Pete. How can people find out more about you, more about what you're doing, more about what's happening at Capital Turners, and so that we can really get to know more about you and get in touch with you? Help me out.
That's a great question, Billy. So I got a commitment to post to LinkedIn every day this year. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. So you can find me there. It's just my name, Peter Turner. And then we also have our website that has links to different things like the mastermind. And that's capitalturners.com.
Capitalturners.com. I think we've heard it a couple times. I've just said it. Pete said it earlier. And definitely when you check him out on LinkedIn, leave him a nice personalized invitation so that he already knows that you've invested time to get to know him here on the Going Long podcast with yours truly, Billy Keels. Pete, on behalf of the entire Going Long family, I want to say thank you so very much for deciding to invest your time with me and with us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank your audience for their time.
All right. Fantastic. Pete, give me 15 seconds. I'll wrap things up if you don't mind. Going Along family. Pete's made it really simple. He's shared his experience. He talked about whether it was military or corporate life and being able to find his sense of innovation and wanting to not just be able to continue to grow individually, but also to help others. Take today's conversation, share it with 2 or 3 other people. Find out exactly, the path that you want to take. Don't let it stay in theory. Make it practice. Heck, even reach out to Pete. He's even told you, capital turners, that you can figure out ways to be involved or learn from Pete and the team that he has. And you know what? While you're taking action, I'm going to be here preparing for the next conversation or solo episode. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Today's conversation was sponsored by the Billy Keels Advisory Program. If you're looking to make your 9-to-5 optional and need some help, just go to billykeels.com/advising. Once again, that's billykeels.com/advising.